What you are about to hear is not fiction. It is not a movie plot. It is not a conspiracy theory. It happened on the night of April 25th, 2026, in the heart of Washington, D.C. Inside one of the most recognizable hotels in America, a single man walked through a luxury hotel lobby, rode an elevator, descended a stairwell, and came within seconds of changing the course of American history forever. The target was the President of the United States. The entire executive cabinet of the most powerful nation on earth was seated together in one underground room, and for a terrifying stretch of time, nobody stopped him. This is the complete, detailed breakdown of the third assassination attempt on President Donald J. Trump. Stay with us because every single detail of this story matters. To truly understand what happened that night, you first need to understand the location. The Washington Hilton Hotel is not just any hotel. It sits on Connecticut Avenue in Northwest Washington, D.C., just minutes from the White House. It has hosted presidents, diplomats, foreign leaders, and some of the most powerful gatherings in American political history. In fact, the hotel is so deeply embedded in political culture that it has its own permanent Secret Service nickname. This is a venue that has seen decades of high-profile security operations. It should have been one of the safest places in the city that night. The event being held was a formal black-tie dinner. 2,600 guests had gathered in the hotel's International Ballroom, a massive underground venue built directly beneath the hotel structure itself. Think about that for a moment. The ballroom is subterranean. There are no windows. There are no easy exits. Once you are inside that room, you are inside a sealed underground chamber. And on the night of April 25th, seated inside that chamber were some of the most powerful individuals in the United States government. President Donald J. Trump was there. The First Lady was there. The Vice President was there. The FBI Director was there. The Secretary of State was there. The Attorney General was there. The EPA Administrator was there. The Secretary of Health and Human Services was there. Effectively, in one single underground room, the entire executive leadership of the United States had gathered together for a formal dinner. The security implications of that alone are staggering, and yet, what happened next exposed vulnerabilities that should never have existed. Now let's talk about the man at the center of this story. Cole Thomas Allen was born on April 11th, 1995. He was 31 years old at the time of the attack. By every external measure, he appeared to be an educated, unremarkable American citizen. He attended the California Institute of Technology, one of the most prestigious scientific universities in the world, from 2013 to 2017. He had no criminal record. He had no restraining orders filed against him. He had no documented history of violence. He was not on any watch list. He was not flagged in any federal database as a person of concern. On paper, Cole Thomas Allen was nobody, and that is precisely what made him so dangerous. Beneath that ordinary exterior, something had been building for a long time. A deep, consuming ideological hatred had taken root, anti-government sentiments, anti-Trump convictions, a worldview that had apparently reached a breaking point. And on the evening of April 25th, 2026, approximately 10 minutes before he made his move, Allen sat down and wrote a message. He sent it to family members. In that message, he referred to himself as the friendly federal assassin. He expressed deep anti-Trump sentiments in explicit detail. He made it absolutely clear that he intended to target administration officials. He was not confused. He was not impulsive. He had made a decision and he had written it down. That message would later become one of the most critical pieces of evidence in understanding his motive. But by the time it reached the right people, it was already too late to stop what was coming. Let's talk about how Allen armed himself, because this part of the story reveals one of the most uncomfortable truths about the entire incident. Allen had purchased a shotgun legally in August of 2025. A standard FBI background check was conducted. He passed. No issues, no flags, no concerns raised. He had also purchased a semi-automatic pistol back in 2023. Again, a background check was conducted. Again, he passed without issue. Both weapons were in his legal possession. Both acquisitions followed the proper legal channels. The system, as it existed, saw nothing wrong with Cole Thomas Allen owning firearms. On the night of the attack, he was carrying both of those weapons. He also had multiple knives on his person, a shotgun, a pistol, multiple blades. He was carrying all of this inside a hotel where the President of the United States was scheduled to speak. And for an extended period of time, nobody stopped him. Here is where the security failures begin to compound in a way that is almost impossible to believe in retrospect. Allen did not fly to Washington, D.C. He traveled from Los Angeles to Chicago by train. Then he traveled from Chicago to Washington, D.C., also by train. This cross-country journey, carrying weapons and a clear plan to use them, raised no alarms. No one flagged him. No one stopped him. No one looked twice. He arrived in Washington, D.C. and checked into the Washington Hilton Hotel on Friday, the day before the event. He checked in as a regular hotel guest. He had a reservation. He had identification. He walked up to the front desk and checked into his room like any ordinary traveler would. Here is the critical detail. When he arrived at that hotel, nobody checked his bags. Not at the front entrance, not at the front desk, not by any security personnel. His luggage, which contained a disassembled shotgun, a pistol, and multiple knives, passed through the hotel completely unchallenged on Friday afternoon. And it gets worse. As late as 5 o'clock in the evening on Saturday, the day of the event itself, Allen's belongings had still not been screened. The hotel was hours away from hosting the President of the United States and the entire executive cabinet of the American government, and a registered guest in that same hotel was sitting in his room with an assembled arsenal, completely undetected. Allen spent Friday night in his hotel room. He assembled his weapons. He waited. He knew exactly what he was going to do, and he knew exactly where he was going to do it. To understand how Allen moved through the hotel, you need to understand the physical layout of the venue that night. The event was divided across two main levels. The upper level was the terrace level. Just below it was the concourse, also called the lower level. Guests attending the dinner were required to pass through a security checkpoint at the bottom of a staircase before they could access the ballroom. That checkpoint included metal detector screening. It was the primary line of defense between the outside world and the room where the president was sitting. Allen used a stairwell to descend from his hotel room down to the terrace level. He carried his firearms in a bag. He walked down those stairs calmly and deliberately. He knew exactly where the checkpoint was. He had clearly scouted the location. He understood the layout of the building, the flow of foot traffic, and the position of the security barrier. He was not guessing. He had a plan. Security cameras inside the hotel recorded him as he moved through the lobby and corridors. Those cameras captured a man carrying a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives, walking through the corridors of a hotel where the President of the United States was present. And at no point during that walk was he challenged, stopped, or questioned by any security personnel. Let that sink in for a moment. At approximately 8:36 in the evening, Eastern Time, Cole Thomas Allen reached the main security checkpoint. This was the metal detector screening area positioned just outside the ballroom doors. This was the last barrier between him and a room containing the president, the vice president, and the entire executive cabinet of the United States government. He did not slow down. He did not attempt to talk his way through. He sprinted past the initial security barricades and opened fire. At least 2 shots rang out as he engaged the security forces at the checkpoint. A member of the Secret Service Uniform Division returned fire. The shot missed amid the chaos and confusion of the moment, but the agents did not hesitate. Allen was immediately swarmed by multiple officers. He was tackled. He was pinned face down to the ground. He was handcuffed right there at the magnetometers, just feet away from the ballroom doors. He never made it through those doors. The president was safe, but the margin was terrifyingly thin. In the aftermath of the attack, investigators and security analysts began the grim work of understanding exactly how this happened. What they found was not one single failure. It was a chain of compounding vulnerabilities, 5 critical loopholes that, together, allowed a man with a shotgun and a clear intent to kill to get within seconds of the most protected room in America. Loophole number 1 was the hotel guest exemption. The most fundamental flaw in the entire security operation was this: registered hotel guests were not subjected to early screening. Because Allen had checked in as a guest before the event, he existed in a security blind spot. The assumption was that guests had been vetted through the normal hotel check-in process, but that process had no meaningful security component. Loophole number 2 was the complete absence of luggage screening at check-in. An attendee staying in a room adjacent to Allen's confirmed that nobody checked luggage during hotel check-in on Friday afternoon. And as late as 5 o'clock on Saturday, just hours before the president arrived, bags were still going unscreened. Allen carried a disassembled shotgun into that building in a bag, and nobody ever looked inside it. Loophole number 3 was the manifesto that arrived too late. Allen sent his written statement to family members approximately 10 minutes before the attack began. His brother received the message and contacted local police. The warning was real, the concern was legitimate, but 10 10 minutes is not enough time to coordinate a response, identify a suspect inside a secured venue, and neutralize a threat. The warning came too late to act upon. Loophole number 4 was the problem of legal gun purchases with no red flags. Both of Allen's firearms had been acquired through legal channels. Both purchases had required and passed FBI background checks. There was nothing in the system to indicate that Cole Thomas Allen posed any danger to anyone. The legal framework for firearms acquisition as it existed provided no mechanism to identify him as a threat. Loophole number 5 was the most structural of all. A public commercial hotel had been used to host an event bringing together the president and the entire executive cabinet of the United States. That hotel had paying guests checked in across multiple floors. Those guests had access to elevators, stairwells, corridors, and common areas that existed within the same physical structure as the event venue. President Trump himself addressed this vulnerability directly after the attack, posting on social media that the incident would never have occurred at the militarily secured top-secret ballroom currently under construction at the White House. Now let's consider the scenario that came within seconds of becoming reality. What would have happened if Allen had pushed past those agents? What if the security detail had been smaller, slower, or simply overwhelmed by the speed and aggression of his charge? He would have entered the International Ballroom, an underground room, a sealed chamber with no windows and limited exits. 2,600 people packed together in formal attire with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And Allen was carrying a shotgun. In a confined, densely populated underground space, a shotgun is one of the most devastating weapons imaginable. The potential casualty count in the first seconds of such an attack, before tactical agents inside the room could locate and neutralize the threat, is almost unthinkable. We are talking about mass casualties in a sealed room with no escape route. And the people in that room were not random civilians. The president, the vice president, the FBI director, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the EPA administrator. Had that attack succeeded, had Allen made it through those ballroom doors, the United States would have faced a constitutional crisis with no modern precedent. The entire chain of executive command could have been severed in a single evening. America would have woken up the next morning to a leadership vacuum unlike anything in the nation's history. The agents who stopped him at that checkpoint did not just protect the president. They may have protected the stability of American democracy itself. But this was not the beginning of the story. To fully understand the pattern of threats against President Trump, we need to go back to West Palm Beach, Florida, and the grounds of Trump International Golf Club. The golf club is an exclusive private facility, world-class amenities, 27 holes of championship golf, and on the afternoon of the second assassination attempt, President Trump was on the course at the 5th hole, completely unaware that a man had been waiting nearby for approximately 12 hours. The suspect was Ryan Wesley Routh, 58 years old. He had positioned himself behind the chain-link fencing on the outskirts of the golf course. The distance between Routh's position and the president was estimated at between 300 and 500 yards, roughly 200 to 450 meters. He had traveled to the location in a black Nissan SUV. He had parked discreetly. He had spent hours waiting for the right moment, timing his window carefully for when the president would reach the 5th hole. Routh was armed with an SKS rifle, not an AK-47 as was initially reported in early coverage. He had found a gap in the chain-link fence and inserted the barrel of his rifle through it, preparing to take his shot as the president's golf cart approached. A Secret Service agent spotted the rifle barrel protruding through the fence at approximately 1:28 or 1:29 in the afternoon. Shots were fired by the Secret Service at around 1:30. Routh fled the scene immediately, abandoning his weapon and several personal items, including 2 bags and a ceramic tile, as he ran back to his vehicle and escaped. He was later apprehended. Investigators determined that Routh had intended to capture the entire incident on a GoPro camera. His stated objective was to create shock and awe, to sow division among the American people and potentially ignite civil unrest on a national scale. And then there was the beginning, the moment that started it all. July 13th, 2024, Butler, Pennsylvania, a campaign rally, an outdoor stage. Thousands of supporters gathered in the summer heat, and on a rooftop just outside the official perimeter of the rally venue, a young man named Thomas Matthew Crooks had climbed a ladder and taken up a position with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. The building he chose was technically outside the boundaries of the secured rally area. Nobody had swept it. The responsibility fell through the cracks between local law enforcement and the Secret Service, and the result was a catastrophic security failure that nearly ended everything. Let's map out the positions. The president's podium was at the center of the stage. To his sides were 3 bleachers filled with supporters. Behind those bleachers were positioned 2 Secret Service sniper teams, one to the north, one to the south. Between the sniper teams and Crook's rooftop position were tree lines that created partial visual obstructions, particularly for Sniper Team North. Crooks was identified as a person of interest at approximately 5:10 in the afternoon. At 5:30, he was spotted carrying a rangefinder. At 5:52, he was confirmed on the rooftop by Secret Service. And somewhere in that window, between identification and neutralization, the attack happened. Crooks fired 7 to 8 rounds in total. The first bullet struck President Trump on the right ear. That same round continued its trajectory and struck 2 audience members in the third bleacher section, leaving one in critical condition. Additional rounds struck a tractor being used as a makeshift platform for speakers, hitting a hydraulic lever and causing it to rupture. One round fatally struck an attendee in the crowd. The nation mourned his loss. The president dropped to the ground. He was surrounded immediately by Secret Service agents. Through the rally microphone, agents could be heard coordinating which vehicle would be used for evacuation. At 6:40, President Trump was ushered into a black armored vehicle and transported to Butler Memorial Hospital, approximately 11 miles away. The bullet that struck his ear had passed within millimeters of ending his life. Analysis of the trajectory showed that had Trump not turned his head at the precise moment he did, had his head been angled just slightly differently toward the audience, that round would have been fatal. A fraction of a second, a slight turn of the head. That is the margin by which history did not change that afternoon in Butler. 3 attempts, 3 different methods, 3 different locations, 3 different perpetrators with 3 different backgrounds, motivations, and approaches, and one consistent thread running through all of them: security failures that should not have been possible around the most protected individual in the United States. The third attempt was the closest to catastrophic success, not because Allen was the most skilled or the most tactically sophisticated, but because the environment gave him access that should never have existed. A hotel guest with a bag full of weapons, walking unchallenged through corridors where the president was present. That is not a small oversight. That is a fundamental breakdown in protective intelligence. The agents who stopped Allen at that checkpoint responded with speed, courage, and decisiveness. They deserve recognition for what they prevented. But the harder question, the question that security officials, policymakers, and the American public now need to confront directly, is how he got that close in the first place. 3 attempts. The story is not over, and the lessons from each one of them have never mattered more.